the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Greetings and welcome to this episode of AVNation TV's Connected. I'm your host, David Danto, and what can I say? In a normal year about this time, I would be sharing with you experiences of walking through halls and waiting on lines at the biggest technology show of the year, CES. But as everybody knows, and as we've been saying for quite a while, this is not a normal year. CES, while they were adamant about putting a show on, a physical show on toward the middle of 2020, finally came out and said, look, we can't do this, but we're going to put on the best digital show that we possibly can. And rather than show you pictures of exhibitors and everything else, I figured the smartest thing to do, since I didn't have any of that available, would be to put together a bunch of analysts and influencers and smart people who've attended CES before and give you their thoughts, not just mine, of what's going on. Before I do that, let me share with you this very unscientific poll that I did on Twitter about a week after CES ended, just asking what people thought of it. As you can see here, it's a very mixed view. It certainly wasn't fabulous, and a lot of people were disappointed by it for different reasons. I certainly feel for the team at CTA because they had to do something, and they did something under the circumstances that was good. But there were some issues with the show as well. And the one thing that I'll say that I've said to a couple of people at this point now is, there is no better organization than CTA to put on a live in-person show. There is no more important, better experienced conference, even with all its lines and waits and crowds and everything else, than CES every year. It is my most important visit to a conference to learn about what's going on in technology, and they are clearly the best at it. But they're not the best at putting on virtual performances, and while they did put all their eggs in one basket from a very competent technology provider to help them with this, they could have reached out to people who have been doing these virtual conferences for the last 6-8 months during this pandemic, who've learned what works and what doesn't, and could have brought some of that expertise into what they do. The terrific analysts and influencers that I've put together for their comments on this year's CES have all provided me their information completely unedited, exactly the way they wanted to. Some were just giving me talking heads. Some have given me a full produced segment. I'm going to string them all together here now. So let's hear what they think.
This is Tim Albright from AVNation for the Connected Show, talking about CES 2021, the virtual part. First up is the DisplayPort 2.0. It is something special. You should take a look at it. The one thing about it, though, is the fact that because of COVID and because of supply chain issues, those will be displayed. Yes, we had to talk about the flying car from GM and Cadillac. Not exactly what I was looking for, but it's cool in the fact that, yes, it's a concept, and I understand it's a concept. And Danto is going to rant and rail about concept cars. I get it, right? They're just this side of vaporware because they're not exactly promising them to you. However, the thing about concept is they're showing you what's possible, not necessarily what's probable, but what's possible. And I think the thing about the flying car is it's possible. So that's when we take the next step. Same thing happened 25 years ago when it came to electric cars. Honda had a hatchback 20 years ago that the entire back hatch was one giant battery because that's how big the battery had to be. Well, fast forward 20 years, those concepts have now evolved into things like Tesla and other EVs. So, let's take the concept part of the flying car and run with it. LG has some new projectors to the 4K that are sub $3,000. Why that's important is because of the resolution and the price point. Projectors typically, both from home and office, have been above $5,000, sometimes $10,000 when it comes to 4K. Price points are dropping when it comes to 4K. That means that resolution is going to be more and more prevalent both in the home and in the workspace. So hopefully content will shortly follow. If it doesn't, the question will be, What is the benefit of 4K? And that's an open question, something that other people, I'll let them debate. Last but not least is the gaming laptops. Oh my goodness, there was an awful lot of them. And here's the thing about the gaming laptops: not necessarily that okay, cool, we can game, and we can do it remotely, and we can do it on the go. The reason I want to mention the fact that there were so many gaming laptops and the power behind them, both from a refresh rate standpoint as well as a processing power standpoint. When you're an AV programmer and you're a control systems programmer specifically, or you start looking at things like doing QSC programming and DSP programming, you need a beefier machine than just the off-the-shelf Dell or the off-the-shelf HP or what have you. Going to a gaming laptop, I think, is incredibly important when you are an AV systems programmer, whether it's control or DSP or what have you, because it's going to give you better processing power and better graphics and resolution. That's why I'm excited about all these gaming machines. Plus, it's cool because I still like to game. So those are my picks for CES 2021. Enjoyed myself. A little bit weird with the virtual part, but nonetheless, it was exciting and fun to attend.
CES 2021. Want to talk to you about three things today: how the event went, what it tells us about collaboration going forward, and the three kind of big trends that we saw come out of the week of announcements that we had. How was it? A little bit underwhelming for me, to be honest. I didn't have great expectations, and I had a feel that the keynote part might work out better than the actual floor event, if you like. And it really turned out to be the case. The keynotes were fine. Actually, I had the opportunity to go and attend many of them, something that I never do when I'm in Vegas. Because I'm running from one event to the next and meeting to meeting. So that was a plus, and I'm sure that a lot of people benefited from that. The quality of the speakers was good. There was variety of topics, and there was diversity in the number of people that were given a platform to present. From a keynote perspective, it was interesting that a lot of the keynotes didn't have a lot around products, especially products that are coming this year or the next 6 months. There was more about futuristic products, especially around the automotive business. And then there was a lot of talk around generally the brand and what they're trying to achieve. Overall, I think that I came away from the week definitely with better feet than I normally do. We didn't put in all the steps that we usually do at the event. A tired mind, but also a clear feeling that there's so much more that needs to be done around collaboration, and that the push that we've seen over the past year has been great and got us a long further along than we've ever been, but so much more needs to happen, especially for the part that was the weakest part, which was really the one-on-one collaboration, or if you're thinking about it from a CES perspective, the ability to go and talk to the brands and meet and ask questions, something that you normally do on the show floor in such an easy way. And, that discoverability of new brands and products wasn't there in the digital format. So I really think that, as much as we tend to focus about productivity and the how do we make the water cooler moment in a digital environment, we really need to think differently about not just that within a company, but how do brands and consumers, potential buyers, interact in a digital moment. What CES offered was the idea of having either a meeting or a Zoom meeting with the brands that you were interested in, depending on which platform or event you were attending. But that didn't really work because you go into the Zoom meeting. I tried on a couple of occasions. Nobody was there. It just says that I needed to wait, and I wasn't quite sure if I needed to wait like I did at PepCom or other events in real life in Vegas, where you actually wait your turn and there's a series of people in front of you that are asking questions, but nobody turned up. And so after 10 minutes I kind of left. I've heard people that did get into these meetings, and it was kind of strange because you dropped in, you weren't quite sure where the conversation was, and you interacted and then you left. And so I think that part of how do you give access is one that I really would like the brands that are focusing on productivity and collaboration to really focus on going forward, because it's an untapped opportunity for brands to reach out to consumers. Think about it, for support as an example. And, I'm not saying all call centers need to go video, but that's an added features that you can start thinking about. And I know companies like Cisco have already started to think about that. So the idea of really bringing people together, both internally for that water cooler moment and externally on a B2C level. That was my biggest takeaway from how the event was set up. From a trend perspective, I saw three things that came out kind of loud and clear. One, obviously, collaboration. This was a big focus, especially for device manufacturers, PCs, smart speakers, anything that has either to do with the camera and computing or sound and computing. And the idea that in this new world where office and home become one and the same, there are trade-offs that you need to make from both the level of acceptance, if you like, that the user is going to have for a device that comes into their home is going to be different, and you're going to have to be more careful and attentive when you're designing things that end up being part of my decor in a sitting room or a kitchen table or even an home office environment. So that on the collaboration side, we saw interesting things like monitors that now have a camera and a speaker, like Dell introduced more speakers, devices that are targeting what is the mobility within a home setting. And so if you're thinking about PCs, lightweight still matters, because even if simply you want to move away from your home office when you're done 8 hours of video collaboration, and you still have to catch up on email or everything else, but you want to do it from the sofa while maybe you're doubling with pretending you're actually part of a family and interacting with the members of that family. But the idea that you don't want to always be attached to your desk comes into play. The other trend that I saw that was interesting was cleaning. Not cleaning in a home environment, even if we saw that more robotics and cleaners that are AI enabled, that are able to understand where your pets are and the needs of your home depending on the design of the home, but really cleaning from a COVID perspective. So COVID really prioritizing and raising that awareness that a lot of the things that we touch every day, especially our mobile phones, are capturing all the germs that are out to be gathered, so to speak. And so the idea that you might have devices that are doubling from charging your phone to sterilizing your phone, or you have technologies that are enabling you not to touch as much, so touchless UX experiences that not just with voice, but the added camera might help you avoid some steps where that would require you to touch a surface or a screen. So interesting to see that. And although these might be products that don't come to market till later in the year, and so hopefully when the vaccine is going to be ready available, my hope is that it will actually help going forward, not just for COVID, but just for the common flu and some of the illnesses and diseases that are out there that are germs and virus spread, and that will help us lead a healthier life going forward. Just think about normally when we come back from CES, we normally end up with the flu, and that's because we are in a shared environment and we touch things that everybody else is touching and so forth. So I think that some of the, if you like, COVID related enhancement around hygiene will benefit, I think, society way longer than the COVID emergency. And the last one that I want to touch on is not actually product related, but is more, as I mentioned earlier, brands that took the opportunity at CES to talk about corporate social responsibility and the accountability that technology brands have with the products that they bring to market. Obviously, 2020 was a very difficult, but at the same time eye-opening year, not just for COVID, but because of social injustices that we've been witnessed in the US. And I think that especially towards the end of the year, and then during CES itself, we were living that duality of what was going on in the US and tech. It felt a little bit surreal at time to go from talking about what was going on in DC and smart toilets in CES in the digital Vegas, but so is our life following technology. But companies that took that moment to either reiterate where they stand in principle, the whole Microsoft keynote was about that, was about their accountability, their beliefs, and how they are aware of the impact that the products that they bring to market have on society. Or companies like Sony that took a moment to talk about some of the CSR, so corporate social responsibility initiatives that they have. Is all great and it was very welcome. I just want companies to do more than talk about it and have great initiatives. And so, 2021, I really hope that this moment in time where we have seen companies being more aware of their responsibility will lead them to do more and more to drive not just inclusion and diversity within their own companies, but also equity of access for technology across the board from their product perspective. That's kind of it in a very quick summary for what there was. I think that generally, CES is the beginning of the year for technology. 2021 was the first time that we did it digitally. I'm sure that being a bit of a cynic, it was good enough for people not to complain, but bad enough for people to want to go back to Vegas next year if we can do so safely. Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is David Mario Smith from Inflow Analysis. Some know me as DMS. First, let me say thank you to David Danto for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts and takeaways from CES. Attending CES this year was a bit different. That's probably the understatement of the year, right? With what we've been going through. But I think this year's show and its virtual format represented and accurately reflected our current reality for the most part. So there was a big focus on work, health, and entertainment gear for the stay-at-home lifestyle we're all living right now. So, smart home and smart appliances were big news. You had the touchless trend with touchless faucets and toilets and doorbells and so forth. Now, there was an infinite amount of specific takeaways and things to talk about related to this year's CES, but overall, it was that recognition of our current reality that drove a lot of the product announcements and innovation that we saw, I think. So as the first ever virtual CES because of COVID, there were some shorter sessions, shorter press conferences. I noticed. Now the keynotes were hard to keep up with a bit and hard scheduling your time accordingly. I must admit I did not make it much to the virtual trade show floor. Wasn't able to interact as much there with brands. I think what was hard to do in this virtual format was making it easy to discover different brands, and obviously the networking suffered as well. So networking and discovering brands was somewhat more harder to do in this virtual format. Now, I noticed some of the actual session content from brands was a bit on the lighter side, and I'm thinking it was maybe due to brands, probably not sure who would be in attendance or how much people would be there in attendance. So some big brands like Google actually were absent, so virtually things were definitely a lot quieter than years past. Definitely saw a rise in PC technology and PCs, which to me is a direct reflection on rising usage, right? With people working from home, homeschooling, and the need for more powerful machines, right? To conduct those sort of home sessions. So we saw some options emerge at the show, which was good. One of the things in a topic that's sort of near to my heart, we saw diversity and inclusion was also a huge topic and theme as companies are sort of grappling and dealing with a serious reckoning on race, systemic racism, and inequalities that have plagued our society and sort of been an ingrained part, right, of the fabric of the society. So diversity and inclusion programs were being brought to the forefront to address the workplace manifestation of these issues across all industries. And a big part of that were, key keynote sessions and diverse panels to really spark the conversation. The CTA has been moving more in this direction. Actually, a really good session that was the opening for the Diversity and Inclusion Conference sessions at CES. I had Dawn Jones, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Intel, and Monica Poindexter, Chief Diversity Officer at Lyft, on stage for the January 12th for their keynote, which was titled Keys to Success: How Diversity and Inclusion Helped Us Survive 2020. The discussion included how diversity and inclusion have become more than a business imperative and are becoming an essential tool in creating innovative solutions to some of 2020's biggest business challenges. So really good discussion, really good panel. In fact, Tiffany Moore, Senior Vice President of Political and Industry Affairs at the CTA, was actually the moderator for the panel. But this again shows an important conversation that needs to be happening in tech and in tech circles. I'm here in the Bay Area. It's something I know that a lot of the companies are trying to start focusing on more, but it's more than just the trying and the attempts and looking at numbers. We really have to be boots on the ground and really addressing the issue. And so it extends into, product diversity as well, because diversity of thought, experiences, skills, and background is critical for innovation and to actually have an environment of innovation. And so it's good to see the CTA sort of seriously take on this mantle and this initiative. So it was good to see social issues, systemic injustices get discussed, and the path forward for diversity and inclusion. And just overall an important discussion on accountability, right? Corporate and individual accountability alike. So a very different CES experience this year, but hey, we've all been, having a very different experience with work and our home lives for the most part. So hopefully we can convene in Vegas in person next year. All right. So David Mario Smith, DMS, out. Thanks, guys. And thanks, David.
Q Division proudly presents Q's Tech Talks, a show about the latest consumer trends, technology, and digital acceleration. And now let's bring on the hosts of Q's Tech Talks, Ben and Manolo.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Q's Tech Talks AVNation Special Edition. I'm Ben Gauthier, and with me, as always, is Manolo Almagro. Manny, how is it going, buddy?
Hey, it's going okay, man.
Hey, so we're here quickly. This is a real quick thing. We're going to be talking about CES. We just got back from CES, I take it. We were...
You stumbled on that one. We kind of did get back.
Yeah, exactly. CES just happened. It had all its stuff. It had flying cars, right? What else did it have?
Yep. It had ice cream pods like the Keurig things, the
little Keurig pods.
And ice cream. Yep.
Yeah, they had that. They also had there was like sex toys.
Yes, there were.
Yeah. But my favorite thing too is that there was also augmented reality model yacht racing, which is something that I recommend watching the video because it was very, very intense.
It's a very helpful solution for today's ales that we have. I think it's a great solution.
So CES, it was all virtual, and there were bless their heart, they tried and everything. It was a very good stopgap solution, but I think Manny, from all of our conversations, we can agree that it just did not hit the mark as to what we expect from CES to setting a tone for the whole year.
Yeah, I think that the key is when you're looking at consumer technology, the marketing videos are great. I mean, you can get them anywhere on YouTube and stuff like that. But I think when you're looking at AR and VR technology, there's no way you can really experience the quality of it, the size of these massive TV booths that we see. You can't replicate that in a virtual environment. It's just, you can't. So not everybody came this one, right?
I know, and that's the thing. For our listeners, as we kind of go through there are three main takeaways. And the first one isn't about who was there, but who wasn't there. There was a lot of stuff every year that I want to kind of talk about, just trends for smart home technology, mostly because for us it allows you to see different behaviors. That's to what these companies are going to start to set. And two major players weren't there. When you have Amazon and Google not being present and not participating, it's very difficult to kind of say this is what's happening from the smart home. And like you said, from you could say that there's a device that's going to be the Keurig for ice cream, or even fridges that are having better ice coming out of them. It really didn't hit the mark.
Right. I mean, it's basically 50% of the vendors did not attend or participate. Right. So when we look at the trends of what's happening, it's hard to say it's a trend when you're missing half the population to show you what else they have, right? So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so we have our work cut out for us when it comes to those things. So the next one that Manny, you're going to talk about too, though, is there is some stuff that's happening in the world of screens.
Yes. Well, last year was the folding screen, the folding phone. This year was the rolling phone screen, actually, I should say. LG and some other ones last year showed their version of a screen that would roll up for your TV, and then they shrunk it down for these telephones, which basically you can roll it up like a map, and then suddenly you have a tablet. It's pretty cool. I think that was an interesting development. And then also they had bendy screens, not just bending like you have to bend it. It actually has the flexibility. So to me, from an AV commercial perspective, this is yet another, we keep talking about how surfaces will become connected. This is the next step.
Was a big deal. We thought maybe it was going to be a bigger deal. We weren't really sure. We put them in a COVID tech. We put that into a big map. And of course, in that we had Razer had some fancy mask or whatnot to kind of take a look at. There was also lots of robots sanitizing different UV light sanitizing robots that go around and do those. But when it talks about the behavior part that we do think is going to stick, It was about telemedicine, which isn't new. That was CES 2 years ago, 3 years ago with telemedicine, teledocs. Now that's their time to shine, but also about you're starting to see things with education. So like remote learning. And when you start getting home technology for remote learning, that's when you start seeing behaviors that are going to happen out in the marketplace, where you're going to see a lot more intertwined parts with remote education and just remote anything that could end up happening.
For a 5-minute recap of what we saw at virtual CES, I'd like to, I think that's what we saw. It wasn't really anything groundbreaking. Screens, TV screens continue to get better, better quality. The technology is evolving. 8K is still there. The content's not there yet. Bendy screens, foldy screens are on the way, which of course is, looking forward. And as Ben said, I think the work from home, school from home technology that was being shown just is definitely a trend that we're going to continue to evolve in. And then I think when it comes to wellness and health and telehealth, all of that's definitely also going to be an opportunity, because you think about how we're bringing these technologies to things like nursing homes and aging in place and things like that, and even allowing people that aren't really technically savvy to use this technology. So I think this is where we're going, and this is what we're looking at. So thanks.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, everybody.
I probably had more conversations with Alexa than any humans in 2020. So thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective on CES 2021. The Consumer Electronics Show is, for me, the most important show of the year. The actual products are really icing on the cake. It's these undercurrents and trends in consumer electronics that I'm looking for, because they reveal the icebergs and opportunities that impact the entire global economy. And this year, more than ever, because we can measure the impact of the pandemic on the industry, on supply chain resilience or disruption, on innovation, on partnerships, and of course, the adoption of new infrastructures like 5G. So, how was the show? Well, despite the pandemic, mind-blowing gadgets, announcements coming at a dizzying pace before, during, and after the show. But I want to talk about the CES virtual platform, because I think it's set the bar for other trade shows to follow. First, there's the portal itself. Now, that's dramatically different sitting at a computer than it is at a traditional show floor CES experience. But the consumption of the content was convenient and efficient. I had access to massive amounts of real-time and pre-recorded content. And the portal made it possible to build a custom schedule in advance and put it into my Outlook calendar. And then I could jump in and out of live events. And that's a great benefit, because several interesting topics were scheduled at the same time slot. And then there were these interactive breakout keynote sessions, where from the portal, I could go right into Microsoft Teams. And the chat feature allowed people to ask questions of the keynote speakers, which worked quite well. There was also this comfort of being home and having food breaks and sitting in sweatpants. The content was of good quality, excellent presenters, and well produced. And the combining of real stages, where the presenters were on a real stage, made me feel like I was really in a room getting a keynote. And combined with the virtual content and the use of green screens, it was actually better than being in an auditorium. So what would I fix? Well, where were the products? Of almost 2,000 exhibitors, I probably encountered less than 200. And that's with 30 hours of binge watching. So the format was good for canned product reviews, but not self-discovery. It was more like window shopping at Macy's. And I'm thinking maybe a pre-game tailgate party kind of feel would be more atmospheric. And that leading up into the physical show and running with the show would probably be really powerful and probably come back again next year. And then there's the search engine for exhibitors. I may not know the name of the product or even the category. So I'd like to have a search by what's trending, what's highest rated. Having some visual aids and heat maps and icons would help. But let's talk about the technology itself. Overnight, technology became a lifeline for all of us. And in solving for COVID, the customer tech appears to have been solving longstanding problems too. I mean, take every aspect of the service industry. It's going to benefit from the suffering of COVID in the end, because any of that tech is going to be sticking around. we learned about the digital first shopping trend, which has helped retail go into survival mode. That's actually going to create opportunities to surge. The frictionless transactions and these curbside shopping needs are opening up new customer engagement opportunities that are going to last a lot longer than the pandemic. And the acceleration of the technology, the globalization, and now diversity that's going on, these are the ingredients that build a bonfire of innovation. And it's going to come on fast, deep, and fused. The four technologies I'm talking about that are on fire, of course, are machine learning, robotics, natural language processing, and cloud computing. Everything has LiDAR navigation, not just smart cars, but smart vacuum cleaners. And the Internet of Things has just morphed into the intelligence of things, not just the next generation TV, but we're seeing health tech crossing over into vehicle tech. Take GE's all-in announcement on electronic vehicles. I mean, that was staggeringly bold, but their Halo autonomous taxi, that has biometric sensors to read passenger vital signs, aromatics, gesture, and voice control. At the same time, the eVTOL, which is GE's concept for a single passenger flying car, I mean, that was so mind-blowing, it's difficult to tell reality from fiction. And we're going to come back to that trend in just a second. But first, CES said that the best of the best was the AMD Ryzen mobile CPU. What that's telling us, it's not the products that are killing it, but the blazing tech that's going inside all the products that's trending. And that's even also the best transportation, like Mercedes Hyperscreen. That got a lot of press this year. That's positioning itself for the next generation self-driving cars. What's interesting and trending, because many of these companies are building these, is that the cars now are getting so smart, you can't navigate them with a typical layered interface. So they're having to spread out all the information across the entire dash. But let's go back to defining what is reality, because LG used a virtual influencer called Ria Kem. She announced several products during the keynote. Well, it was impossible to tell, but Ria was not a real person. But she's a DJ and she has 7,000 followers on Instagram. That tells us that artificial intelligence is getting real deep. It's becoming AGI, artificial general intelligence. That's when computers are so powerful, they've broken through the bottleneck of learning any human task. And soon computers are going to be teaching themselves. And that depth of understanding, that's reaching superintelligence. So the trend here is on AI ethics, because there are human interests and there are machine interests. And now we're fused at the tech. So everyone is talking about making sure humanity retains control of the intelligence we create. Also trending was the sense of social consciousness in the companies. And this was expressed by many of the leaders. It's deeper than just selling products. Their bottom line is dependent on focusing on equality, racism, environment, and the morality. Not just the consumers, but the companies themselves have a conscience. And finally, I want to talk about what I think is going to be a new category, and that's sustainable tech. And that's when we're combating waste or conserving water. I mean, tech junk is a real problem. These devices are having shorter and shorter life cycles. So this intersection of public health and health for the planet. Dell announced bioplastic laptops. Samsung came out with a solar TV remote. And Samsung's also allowing for the reconverting of their older tech into doing IoT tasks. So there's this potential to accelerate the growth of tech that supports this circular economy. And ultimately, that should help keep us healthier and safer. So disappointments with the show? I guess my big one is, of all of these TVs, I saw none of them that integrated web conferencing. I mean, didn't they see us all Zooming all year long? Why can't they put microphones and cameras inside the display? Instead, we saw fitness systems with Logitech cameras sitting on top. And then the Microsoft keynote by Brad Smith, and the sense of perils and promise of technology. I mean, the cyber breach was really a problem, and Microsoft complained about the threat, but they didn't provide solutions. They were reaching out for a collective response, but cybersecurity is going to be a huge problem, a huge concern, and I'd like to see Microsoft take more responsibility and action. And of course, we couldn't see the crowd's ooh and awe We couldn't hear the whirl of the drone props. We couldn't feel the raw chaos and energy of discovery that makes the CES show floor. But my 3 top winners, my first one is a product called Mojo Vision, and that's a single contact lens heads-up display. And it ended up winning the Last Gadget Standing Award. And I liked it because you could overlay information without obscuring your view. So this sense of giving you superpowers. And it's a great idea, but I do think it's going to be difficult to get past the FDA. And TCL announced their 17-inch OLED rolling tablet. And that looks really ambitious, but finally we're seeing OLED rolling products come out, which would be great. And the last one, I want to commend the diversity among the company's leadership that was on display throughout the show. There were lots of women, lots of minorities, outstanding intellectual firepower on display. These people are running the most important companies and they're providing great insights throughout the show. So thank you. And I look forward to sharing more CES 2021 insights in the days and weeks to come.
Hi, this is Adrian Cottrell from the Daily Do. I'm going to talk a little bit about CES 2021, which took place a couple of weeks ago. CES is an important event to me. I think I've been pretty much every year since the mid-1990s, so I guess that makes me one of the longest serving CES press people who's been to the event. I find it pretty important to go. It's a fun place to go. For anybody who lives through the UK winters, it's not as bad as many places around the world, but it's great to be in Vegas and get a little bit of sunshine on your back early in the year. The biggest thing about CES, like any event, I think, is the networking. So I was incredibly disappointed, but not surprised, of course, that CES 2021 didn't happen this year. I don't think there was obviously any way that it could have happened. Last year saw 170,000 people at the event, and I was privileged enough to be there, and I met David Danto and all the other people who you will see on this show. And we spent a lot of time talking about the event, going to events, networking, having a bit of fun and sharing our experience. Something, of course, that we missed this year as it was virtual. It was a surprise to me that they were so quick to make the event virtual. And I think I was also a little bit surprised that CES took place on the same dates. Once you've realized that your event's not going to happen in person and you're going to put it on in a virtual way or online, you can pretty much choose any time of the year when you'd want to do it. So that was a bit surprising. The other thing was in terms of their numbers. The final press release that came out at the end of the show didn't give the exact numbers, which I found very surprising. And I think that was because they were very disappointed with the attendance. Gary Shapiro, the CEO of the holding company, of the organizing company of CES, did an interview just before, a week before the event, and claimed 100,000 registrations. And he figured that they'd get somewhere to 150,000. I thought that was rubbish at the time. What we've seen from all the events in 2020 that were in person but cancelled and moved to an online format was that you were lucky as an organizer if you got 50% of that number. So really, based on just experience of the other trade shows we had last year, they would have been lucky to get 75,000, 80,000 people to attend. And I don't think they did. I don't think they got those numbers, otherwise they would have announced them at the end. Remember, with all this stuff being online, they touted this big thing with the Microsoft platform they had, that Microsoft spent a lot of time and money building a platform for the event. You can measure these things at your fingertips. You know who's registered but not attended, who's come online. They could give you by minute, by second, by hour, by day levels of who's attended. They could have told us which press conferences were the most popular. They could have said which of the events were the most popular, and they gave none of that data whatsoever. And the only reason I think they did that, because that information would have been at their fingertips, was because they were disappointed with the numbers. I think just anecdotally, talking to the other industry influencers on social media during and after the event, most people got pretty bored with what was going on online within a couple of days. There was a lot of talk about the videos we were seeing were just canned videos. They could have been put up at any time of the day or night. So the fact that you may have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning in your time zone to watch an LG or a Samsung press conference was ridiculous because that video was available on YouTube at any time. So that was a bit strange. One of the debates was how well Microsoft would put this platform together, and CES being a technology show, you would have thought that they could have set the bar very high and set a high standard for an online event. And again, I don't think they did. I've been on much better online events, using some off the platform. It's not the right word. Using some off-the-shelf software packages. So I don't think Microsoft did a good job with their platform, and I don't think CES particularly executed it very well. So that sounds all very negative. I suppose it is negative. If there was a virtual event again, hopefully there won't be next year, but if there was, I probably wouldn't jump so quickly to sign up for it. I don't think you're missing anything. Those who did miss out haven't missed anything, is what I would basically say with CES. The key technology trends was an interesting one. I've often been asked about what was there. Again, I tried to go to as many of the events as I possibly could when boredom hadn't cut in. I see upscaling of TV stuff, something I don't really fully understand, but AI upscaling of TV was popular again. That was popular last year. One of the things I noted, because every press release mentioned the word AI, the social media statistics that we looked at, every other tweet, so 50% of all tweets mentioned hashtag AI. And so that's a weird one. So AI was a technology trend, if you like. But it's not, I think, more than what technology trends were there and were present. I think it's better to look at what was missing. CES and the exhibitors, there was 1,000 exhibitors, I think, they missed the home office, just like many other industry associations in the AV world have missed as well. Work from home, remote working. It's the big thing. Home office now is the big, big, big thing. And I saw nothing really of any note about home office. So I would say rather than the technology trends to take a look at, i.e. the AI stuff that was talked about previously, I think the thing was what they missed, and they missed the home office. That was a big, big, big loss for people attending. Most of the stuff was the same old, TVs, mobile phones, robots, gadgets. There wasn't a great deal to see from many of the exhibitors that you couldn't see elsewhere. Again, in terms of exhibitors, I've always said this. I don't get paid to say this for sure. I would always exhibit if I was a startup at either Showstoppers or PepCon. Those two events for journalists, bloggers, industry influencers, etc., are the two most important events at CES, two of the most popular events. I guess it's much cheaper, at least I think it's much cheaper to exhibit at Showstoppers and PepCon. This year they were joined by Techfluence, a new company, I think, or a new show that goes alongside CES. And also, another thing I'd say is that the platforms that Showstoppers, PepCon, and Techfluence used actually showed up a lot of the of what Microsoft and CES had put together in their main platform. So those three events platforms were much better. Showstoppers in particular brought some great speakers online. This is something, to be fair, that CES did do with their anchor desk. The CES anchor desk was very good. They had some youngish people, in their mid-20s, I suspect, well thought of on social media, well followed, and the anchor desk was good. It was a good innovation. I think maybe I'll go back on saying what was not a trend, but other AV shows should look at doing the same sort of anchor desk. That was a lot of fun. I tuned into a lot of times, and they created a lot of social media storm, a lot of social media tweets from that as well. So they were good. But Showstoppers put some great speakers on when they did specific events for their exhibitors. So that was pretty good. Funnily enough, well, not funnily enough, because he's a great guy and a great presenter, Shelley Palmer. Last year, I queued, even though I was press, to get in to see Shelley Palmer at every single event I possibly could at CES. I wanted to get in the front row and meet him. Shelley Palmer was just brilliant. The funny thing was, though, his events this year during CES were all free. They were all streamed live on Facebook. They're streamed live on YouTube. So if you Google Shelley Palmer, you can go and see what he talked about. His events are not only a lesson in how to present, the way he handles his cameras, the way he handles his speech, the way he talks. A lot of the speakers across CES, interestingly, are doing probably what I'm doing now, and speaking far too fast. The number of times I was screaming at my camera to an LG person or a Samsung person, slow down. When you haven't got an audience in front of you, what do? You speed up. I'm saying I'm doing it now. When there's an audience, you can look around and you can speak slowly and make sure you've got the audience with you. I know it's a difficult thing to do, but anyway, Shelley Palmer was amazing. One thing I would recommend is you Google Shelley Palmer, look on YouTube for his sessions he did during CES. He summed up the show pretty much better than anybody else could possibly do. He was really, really good. In terms of CES as a whole, as I said before, I always don't want to be a downer on the whole thing. I think I was very disappointed. I wouldn't rate the experience more than a 2 or 3 out of 10. There was too much canned video that could have been produced and distributed at any other time during the year. I think some of the exhibitors will be now realizing that they wasted their money exhibiting. If you've got a brand, I've said this so many times before, if you've got a brand and a product and a social media following, you can release your product to the world via YouTube or some interactive webinar at any time you like. You don't need to do it at CES. And what CES seemed to do to the Samsungs and the LGs of the world during CES was constrain them. Not one of those events was interactive. Not one of those events allowed people like myself on a media day or just other members of the audience during the other days to ask questions and to get an answer. And so there's no point in being online. It might as well be a TV show. In terms of all the exhibitors, the one that should go away with the most pride is Lenovo. They did something fantastic. They got their huge share of Twitter, a huge share of voice on Twitter, on social media, by putting a competition together. Obviously, they are a brand that people know. Loads of people were tweeting and were doing their competition. And they got lots of share of voice from the whole thing. So I think Lenovo came away as the best in terms of the exhibitors I saw. But overall, it wasn't a particularly brilliant experience. And I really look forward to it going back to being a live, in-person event next year. Because as long as CES don't watch this video and ban me from coming, I'll be there.
So at CES 2020, I met with and then afterwards chatted with my two friends, Doug Money and Evan Christel. And here we are back again after CES 2021, or what was left of it. And I want to get both of their opinions as to what happened. So virtual event, guys, obviously there was no choice. What do you think, Doug? How did it go? What was good? What wasn't?
Well, I have a love-hate relationship with CES just due to the size of the event, the expense of the event to travel, and the massive amounts of email that get dumped into my email box that happens every year. So, given the difficulties that CTA had to do something like this virtually, it was okay. I mean, I wouldn't go, obviously there were many areas of improvement and that were necessary. But there's also the cold hard truth that virtual doesn't substitute for a live event. Just not working.
Evan?
Yeah, I would concur. I think to the outside observer who doesn't make the annual pilgrimage to Las Vegas for CES, it kind of looked the same. You had lots of tech news, lots of tech announcements and cool gadgets and videos. And so it didn't really look that different from the outside looking in. But of course, to the on-site attendees, longtime attendees, it was a completely different experience. I mean, the top 10, 15, 20 stories were, pretty much the same, top of the headlines. But it was the 200 other stories, the 500 other stories that you really missed. And that lack of discoverability of finding innovative new things, new companies, people. I mean, that was all, to me, kind of left by the wayside this time as a virtual event.
Yeah, Evan, I've made this comment before, even on this show, but I find that the CES show done by the CTA folks is probably the most important conference I go to every year to get insight. How much do you get out of it? How much in general, not just this year, how important is this event to you?
To me, it's become less important. I mean, I think we're all going kind of niche in terms of events now, and maybe we reached a point where CES kind of peaked in terms of its bigness. And frankly, it felt so big last year it was almost impossible to navigate. So hopefully, we can break up the incredible content and community perhaps into more niche events, things like digital health and wearables. That's something I'm interested in, or maybe space and aerospace for Doug. What do you think?
I think that, well, I think the serendipity goes out of it when you start going niche markets or any sort of verticalishness. I mean, and I think the other problem is that that's what happened to telecom, right? The telecom industry had Supercom, it had the Vaughn shows, and then when those shows vanished, so did. Then all of a sudden you just had all these individual vendor shows, and each individual vendor show or vendor event gives you like a slice of what's going on. It doesn't give you the broadness of what's going on in a particular vertical. And I think the asset or the benefit to the CES show is that you do get a more holistic view of the world rather than a niche, and you get to see some interesting cross pollinations that you normally wouldn't. And I think the other thing about CES is it is a holistic type of worldview. You not only get the specific vendor or applications view, you also get the I guess we'll call this a 7-layer model. We'll call this a something layer model. You get like the downstack view or downstack pieces of the different component vendors and how their technologies fit in up to the individual product or service. So from that perspective, there is a need for a CES, but is there a need for more than one CES? No.
I've had this conversation with the folks from CTA a couple of years ago, very friendly kind of chats, but I'm always of a mind that a great dividing line would be the difference between concepts and solutions. When we do the physical show, it's so large and it's so laid out that you have these enormous booths that don't have anything to show you but a concept, which I think just kills people having to walk around them. I would love to see the concept part of this maybe continue to be digital and online, but the actual services and products and things that are out there be something physical. They're going to have to play with it. They'll obviously get a lot of learning to do. So let's put the criticism and the philosophy aside. Guys, talk to me about what key trends, what key technologies did you guys see coming out of this event that you either were aware of and confirmed or weren't aware of and learned about? Doug, why don't you go first?
I think that it was nice to see a lot of environmental awareness being top of mind for vendors. HP, Samsung, and others were emphasizing the fact that they were using recycled plastics in their PCs, talking about things about the use of ocean plastics and recycled bottles. To me, it was, after COVID, hearing the environmental message to me and seeing the environmental message move forward, that was a good thing. And then also Samsung was talking about upcycling devices, taking like your last year's cell phone and then doing a different software load on it and then turn it into something else in your house. Like for instance, Samsung's demo that they did on Monday at their press conference was take a cell phone and then you can, plug in a charger and it turns into your pet monitor. Now, I'm not sure how upcycling devices is going to work because in the U.S., like I trade in my cell phone, I'm going to get my $200 or whatever, and it goes to the recycler, right? So I'm not sure how upcycling is going to work moving forward if those sorts of economic incentives continue for recycling. But who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, you're going to see your cell phone device, and what you'll do is you'll turn in your cell phone, and rather than it getting resold or repackaged in a device, they'll just strip off the fronts and then turn it into a totally new product that you can go out and order from Amazon or Best Buy. So I think the whole environmental issue, that was the first one that struck me well. Second trend that I thought was interesting was that multifunction devices are moving from the PC, not the PC, from the smartphone into other areas. Like, for instance, we had the phone, and it was this phone, and it was good. And then the phone became the contact manager, music player, web browser, contact things, where our smartphone is more than a phone. It's a multifunctional device. So what I saw from Samsung and some smaller vendors is taking one concept and then being able to add multiple features to it, so it does more than simply one function. Samsung had their robotic vacuum that they rolled out, and it's loaded with a LiDAR. It's loaded with a laser radar. Why would you put in a laser radar into a robot vacuum? And the answer is, well, you can do more things with it. So Samsung's robot vacuum that they rolled out not only will it vacuum your carpets, but it's a home security monitor. It can be a pet monitor. And Samsung was talking about the fact of, if you don't know where your pet is, or he's got anxiety when you leave, once you go back to work, you can take your vacuum and see what your pet's up to. So I think that's interesting too, in respect that let me scrap that off. The other interesting company, I think, was a company called Owl Home, which was making a smart carbon monoxide smoke detector, except it just doesn't do carbon dioxide and smoke. It does full home environmental monitoring, including temperature, humidity. You can do motion detection for security as well. So rather than having to buy a home security thing and 5 other sensors, I can buy a bunch of owls, and then all of a sudden I've got full home coverage for both physical security as well as for smoke fire home safety detection. So I think we're going to see more of these, the single device to multifunction device. I think we're going to see some evolution of that moving forward. When people figure out that you don't buy your Fitbit, you buy your Fitbit for to do X, Y, and Z, or you don't buy your device X, you can buy device X and it'll also do Y and Z. And I think you'll see more of that coming along.
Good, interesting.
Yeah, I saw a real move to kind of practicality.
Yeah.
In what you're describing, Doug, and I think it applies to a lot of areas. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and there were a lot of practical solutions out there, whether it was wearables for monitoring pre-COVID symptoms, whether it was smart masks. I saw from Razer, whether it was, kind of really cool ergonomic chairs for the home office in which many of us are living, or even, various kind of cleaning air purification devices for catching the virus. There were just a lot of really practical solutions, and I enjoyed that. Still had the pie in the sky stuff. Still waiting on my flying taxi, Doug, that we saw from several companies last year, and that's always been a part of CVS. But it was good to see some more solutions that were a little more grounded, if not a little silly maybe in terms of the talking vacuum cleaner. But I think some products that might be actual get into real consumers' hands this year versus just being a design concept.
Okay, so let's wrap it up with the idea of winners and losers. Any big companies or the organization itself or anything, come out really on top and shining in this, and anything really look bad to you? Any, or winners and losers as part of the show or the experience?
I think television is clearly a winner, whether it's the streaming services or the set manufacturers themselves. I mean, I thought I had the penultimate Samsung television here at home now. Evidently, I don't. I'm going to need 8K and mini LEDs. And I'm actually, given the amount of TV I've watched during the pandemic, kind of looking forward to an upgrade. So anything TV related, I think was a big winner. Doug?
It was interesting to see more aerospace related tech slowly start creeping into CES. There's a company called Sierra Nevada Corporation, and they make a space plane, and they had a booth at CES, a virtual booth. So I called them up and I said, dudes, why are you doing it at CES? And they're like, well, we're working with NASA. We want to raise our public profile, and we think CES is the place to be, and we're going to bring a spacecraft, and we want to park it on the exhibit floor next year, and I'm kind of like, okay, I'm down with that. Canon also, Canon, the people that you normally know for photography, Canon's also got a big play. Canon launched 2 satellites and that photograph the Earth, and those satellites are based on their optical technology, in other words, lenses, and off-the-shelf Canon cameras. So Canon is going to move from a company that's like a camera parts company into a more services-oriented company, where you're going to be able to get pictures of the world. So that was kind of cool.
Okay.
But to wrap this, I think we'll see more space next year for a couple of reasons. One is that there are more space companies that want to get larger exposure to the world, number one. And number two is CES might have some extra space that they need to fill next year.
Yeah, when business conferences kick back off again, with my prediction hopefully being the fall of this year, it's going to be interesting to see how big a ramp those are going to be on. And CES may be the next big conference that we all attend. Maybe a couple of smaller ones before that, but let's hope that.
I've already got one penciled in for Las Vegas in October. This is presuming vaccinations. It's presuming a lot of things, but I'm actually, for once, looking forward to it. So Vegas, here I come.
Yep, yeah. Absolutely. And I will point out that I think everybody's pretty tired of virtual conferences at this point. We're ready for the pendulum to swing back, not all the way. We should always have these virtual elements, but we're ready for it to swing back enough so that there's a hybrid mix. And hybrid's going to be the next overused word at the business conferences for the next couple of years. Gentlemen, thank you as always. Let's hear from some other experts on the area. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for what you do, David.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Grover. I work in strategy at Poly, a communications leader in the unified communications and call center space. This was actually my first time attending virtual CES, as it probably was for everybody else, but certainly not my first time attending CES. In terms of virtual conferences, I thought it was a very well done, albeit interesting presentation. I've heard from a lot of colleagues that showing up to see pre-recorded and pre-canned press conferences and meetings with people really took on a new meaning to what virtual means and made you feel like you would have been just better off watching the pre-canned stream on your own time. Personally, when I think of a conference and what CES has meant to me in the past, the experience of wandering the halls of those serendipitous meetings, of just discovering new things unplanned, didn't really translate well into the virtual medium. Particularly, one of the things I missed was the interactivity part of it, being able to go with a colleague and discuss what we were seeing in real time, or have a discussion with a potential vendor, a potential new product or new technology with a colleague, and be able to bounce ideas off of each other, or have that sort of collaborative 3-way, 4-way dialogue that doesn't really translate well even if you did manage to book a one-on-one meeting. In general, I also found it very hard to actually segment the time I needed to properly experience the CES conference the way I had in the past when I was in person. Sitting on my computer, working from home like many people who are seeing this, I found myself drawn into many high priority items because I was available, and as I moved to multitask, my attention was drawn away from what had initially captivated my attention at CES. All in all, I think this is the first step in the evolution of virtual conferences, and we're seeing a lot more virtual conferences now, but I'm really interested to see how this continues to evolve in a hybrid work and hybrid future environment where we can manage to bring some kind of that collaborative element back into it using technologies that might be debuted at future CESs. When I think of some of the key technologies that stood out in my mind and key themes that really caught my attention, the first one top of mind was health. It seemed like, obviously topically relevant, there was health everything, and one of the most interesting segments of solutions that I felt like I was getting assaulted with was sticking a UV light on everything. That this notion that with a UV light instantly you've provided health and productivity and safety benefits, to have a UV light over my keyboard or some sort of UV case for my phone, my cell phone. It struck me as really interesting, and candidly, I don't think nearly as topically relevant to the health space as some of the other things I want to discuss. But from the perspective of who's looking at this product and who's buying it and who's thinking there's value, I had a head-scratching moment of thinking UV technology isn't new. Cleaning things with UV technology isn't new, and I don't think it's going to make anybody who felt unsafe about their workplace, about their space, feel safer because you stuck a UV light on top of that keyboard, which is a shared keyboard. The other really interesting health trend, which I've seen in many different forms, but became a little bit more prescient this year, was around air quality monitoring. I noticed a lot of companies positioning their air quality monitoring as part of a solution and not the whole solution by itself. Again, it struck me as interesting because as a technology and as a product, it's passive. You only know what happened after it happened. And what can you actually change based on knowing something that happened in the past? More to the point, to my best recollection, none of these technologies actually provide the health types of benefits that the marketing and the value prop type tries to push it in towards. They're just telling you, are there particulates in the air, or how good is the quality of your air quality, not if you walked by somebody who just coughed a cold virus or another virus. I know that it may be topically relevant for SMBs and large companies to start installing air quality monitors as part of a holistic solution for enhancing the enterprise or the small business workplace. I just don't know how much actual value it gives to people like you and I. The other trend, which obviously has intersected our lives, is masks. And I was extremely I wouldn't say surprised, but interested to see the quote unquote innovations in masks that people were bringing to market, and candidly all felt more like marketecture than real products. I don't think for many of us we want to accept that our permanent long-term future involves us walking around masked or in the equivalent of a biological protection suit all the time, and that we started to see solutions where it was more permanent masks or masks that purported to start blending into the productivity or the lifestyle rather than just serving a pure function. Struck me as an interesting way to grab headlines. I have seen some of the products that were positioned in this space as winners of Best in CES, and I scratch my head as to who would ever want it and who thinks they can actually make a great business out of selling something like that. More coming home to the space that I work in around unified communications, I was really interested to see what becomes a long-term trend, which is really gaining hold, which is more screen space in cars, and specifically very large display in cars. More and more, I think that as we use the cars not just for commuting from one place to another, but as sort of third place vehicles where you might take a call or a meeting or watch a movie. Seeing big screens in cars starts to enable us with the quote unquote infrastructure of those applications in the future. Certainly, we've seen this in some of the marquee brands like Tesla, right? We saw some very large displays on display from Mercedes, and I'm interested to see how quickly these become commonplace in cars in general, and what follows on from that in terms of the applications and the use cases that people like you and I can use now when we step into a car. Another major trend that I was really interested in was robots and robotics. It seems like when you think of, CES, me as a consumer and my lifestyle, what I would use consumer products for at home, that robots for a very long time have felt like the future. And now we're starting to see robots have a more personalized flair, become more specialized on specific functions. And then that begs the question, is that type of technology accessible yet to you and I? And of course, the last thing that I think really stood out for me, especially now that I sit at home for many, many, many hours a day, was people positioning chairs as technology and innovative products. Uh, clearly at the start of the pandemic, I, like many others, went out and spent a lot of money on a very expensive, very comfortable chair. But seeing that the technology can start to come into the chair with sensors, with massage features, with heating, seems partially a realization that I might be using this chair at home for quite a long time, but also you can enhance my comfort while doing that in a way that it's no longer just, form, and function, but really something that makes me want to be in that place. Well, that's it for me, Jonathan Grover. I really enjoyed the virtual CES this year, and I'm extremely hopeful that I get to go to CES in person again next year.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Atkinson, and I wanted to follow up with you guys regarding CES. Just a quick introduction of myself. My name's Stephanie, and I'm the CEO and founder of Compass Intelligence, as well as VMark, a marketing agency for small businesses. I also recently founded Elevate Our Kids, which is a nonprofit to help K through 12 students get access to laptops during this very hard and challenging remote learning season that we're in. So just a quick recap, I have a couple of notes that I'm going to be looking at here and there. So after attending CES virtually, I have a few comments I wanted to share, and I'll share some of my remarks and personal thoughts and opinions on the event itself, the format, as well as some of the cool products and things that I found very interesting in terms of announcements. So this year was unique, of course, because it was virtual, but I have to give props to the CTA and the teams. And of course, Microsoft was a partner this year, and they were integral in kind of the whole technology and platform behind the event and all of the keynotes and recorded sessions as well. I found that to be really nice, and it took a little bit of a challenge in navigating all of that and figuring out where to go and how to set up my calendar and set up my schedule for the day. It was a little bit challenging because you had to re-register. I found that to be a little bit off-putting, but hey, we're all living in a very challenging situation, so we have a little bit of extra steps here and there to take. But I did find that overall, they did a really good job at really laying out the best that they could for CES to be virtual this year. It was interesting. We're going to miss this year all the face-to-face, but I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. So in terms of kind of my plan at CES, I tried my best to lay out what I was going to do each day, and I tried to do that each morning before or the day of, and make sure I had everything in my calendar, my schedule. That part was challenging because you have your schedule set for the day and you are planning to attend everything, and that's not always the case. I think you are more distracted working from home, and holding yourself accountable and making sure that you're attending everything was very challenging. I enjoyed having the freedom to come and go, and sometimes that comes with a little bit of not holding yourself accountable. I did like the option of being able to listen to the replays, especially the keynotes and some sessions that I did miss because I had some other work activities. The navigation, again, was a bit quirky on the site, but I figured it out eventually. The drawbacks revolved around, again, like I said, not holding myself accountable for attending all the sessions I said I was going to attend. So that self-discipline is, I think, very hard for virtual events. And being able to come and go and walk away and go grab snacks and all of that, you miss things. So I also miss the excitement of the booth displays, the lights, the signage, the demos, just all of the event information that we're missing. as being an analyst, being a part of the press, I generally was able to, in the past, attend all of these really cool announcements, events, parties. Um, the social events, of course, are just that piece is just completely missing. And then the excitement on the show floor. A lot of times I would just not plan on um, getting to the show floor, but I would get there and I would roam around and just find all kinds of really interesting things, products, tech, gadgets. And so you miss that, being able to have that flexibility to just go and kind of browse. You don't have that with the virtual event. You kind of have to be structured and plan everything. Um, for my role at Compass, I focus very heavily on the B2B tech space. So my areas of interest at CES focus on work from home, small business, enterprise applications, and business technologies that include mobile, IoT, and emerging tech. That being said, I try my best to attend the events around Internet of Things, AI, 5G, business gadgets, and also smart cities. So, which I didn't really come across as much around that this year on the smart city side. A few of my favorite highlights are around product announcements, including, of course, there's the cool factor of all of those robots. And this year, that didn't disappoint. There were a lot of cool robots announced this year. My favorite being the Samsung that bought Handy. Of course, I thought it was really cool that it could bring you your wine, clean the house. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Bringing you your beer. Um, I'd say the other kind of robots that I think maybe might be more realistic are the UV cleaning robots announced by LG. We definitely have a need for that this year, and who knows down the road, future. Just having that UV cleaning robot come in, I definitely see some use cases or some applications in commercial buildings as well as in hospitals. Also, um, I tend to see that most of the robots that were announced at CES this year were really revolved around the home um, and the work from home, but primarily home, just cleaning, taking care of activities around the house. So I actually enjoy seeing more of the robots that are involved with commercial applications, but I know CES is very commercial or consumer oriented, so that might be the case why we don't see as many. But I feel at previous events, being able to roam the show floor, I would see way more commercial application robots that are kind of being out there. Another favorite of mine were the announcement around all the bendable, flexible gadgets devices, including LG's bendable TV. Lenovo also had their foldable ThinkPad X1 and Intel's Horseshoe Bend. Their laptop slash computer, it actually was a lot bigger. And Dell also hinted at one in the works and had some cool kind of videos and images around theirs. And then also TCL had their bendable or their flexible smartphones. So a strong theme around the bendable flexible devices this year. Other cool products announced included Panasonic smart lockers, which had more of a commercial application. So great around contactless food access. Customers can go to the smart locker, open it up with a code or biometrics, get access to food and other goods that they've already purchased. So no interaction with people. There was also a UK-based company that announced Mask Phone, Maskphone, and that was essentially earbuds integrated into the mask with a speaker for making and taking calls without having to actually pick up your smartphone. How many of us are wearing our masks and are fidgeting around trying to find all of our devices, whether it's our headsets or our earpods or our, you know, putting the phone in front of the face, so, and not sounding so muffled. As far as themes and around technology for good and sustainability was a really strong focus this year, and around recycling and upcycling. Samsung actually announced turning old phones into IoT devices. There was also a company, Chipolo One Ocean Edition. They announced Bluetooth-enabled trackers that were all made from fishing nets, trawls, and ropes collected in shallow ocean waters. I thought that was really cool. And then the packaging around that was also vegan and plastic free. Those were strong themes this year. There were quite a few other announcements around packaging and recycled materials. In addition to that, there was also a strong theme around AI. It seems like artificial intelligence was integrated or part of a lot of different solutions that were out there, especially those that were around home goods, electronics, smart locks, home locks, that kind of thing, as well as immersive experiences. I think a lot of the consumer and gaming experiences and the immersive experiences, that was a strong theme this year as well. And other tech kind of hitting the floor revolved around 5G. Wi-Fi 6 was poking in here and there, as well as virtual reality, like I mentioned, and a lot of announcements around upgraded or new devices around audio-visual, headphones and headsets, as well as smart cameras. And in terms of masks, there were quite a few smart masks that were also announced at CES this year. Some that were clear, they had some that had all kinds of extra capabilities. So they were smart masks. They did way more than just protected you. And some of them also had the N95 protection as well. And then there was a great bit of announcements and energy around autonomous vehicles or selfless driving. And related to that, in-dash infotainment systems. If you get a chance, check out Tesla, BMW, and Mercedes in-dash infotainment announcements. Those were really cool. I would say, overall, the experience was better than I expected, but will never match the Vegas experience, of course. I did, however, enjoy a virtual concert given by Black Pumas, and that was sponsored by Verizon, and they allowed us to kind of scan a barcode and get access to kind of the virtual stage experience that kind of gave you that 3D experience. So that was kind of cool. I really just can't wait to see many of your faces in 2022. I look forward to seeing a lot of you guys, and getting back to that old event face-to-face experience is going to be just exciting and probably bring a whole nother level of excitement to CES this next year. And I want to say thank you all for listening today. Please follow me at Steph Atkins, StephatKins, at Twitter, or you can also follow Compass Intel. And I'm wishing you all good health, be safe, and be kind. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.
Good afternoon. I'm Greg Harper, and I'm here in my upstate home in the Adirondacks, where I'm escaping the craziness of New York City. So not quite the same broadcast capability I have at home, but still we've created my lab here upstate. And I just want to talk a little bit about what I saw at CES. Of course, this year, after 30-some, I don't even know how many years I've been going to CES, we didn't able to go physically. We went virtually. And I must say, my first impression was it actually worked. This is an example of one of the scenes from GM's keynote. Interestingly, they used AR and VR capabilities. They also used virtual sets, so we're able to see things that we wouldn't normally have seen had we been on site. Like, for example, how the vehicle came together and how the batteries came in, etc. So I thought it actually went very well. For being virtual set, they did a nice job. Of course, CES is all about TVs, etc. Now, I'm not able to see this, of course, because we only saw it on television, on Zoom, or actually it was Teams that were doing it. But I saw the 4K version of this last year with the micro LED. This is the 8K version. TCL is now the #3 seller of TVs in the United States. With the ultra small micro LEDs, you get blacks that are really equivalent to what you're seeing with OLED. Without the burn-in of OLED, and it's 8K, and it's TCL and low cost. So I think this was a significant thing that was at CES this year. The next thing, of course, is when I mentioned LG. Of course, last year we had and actually the previous year before that, we had the rollable screen. Screen goes up and down, very nice, that technology in OLED. But now they've taken it to the phone. So you have both a single phone here and then the wide phone. Now, of course, there are rumors that LG may get out of the phone business, but this product is very interesting because it's really, is it a phone? Is it a tablet? What is it? But it allows us to do work around device that can be a form factor of a phone or open up to a tablet. So others, by the way, are doing this as well. TCL showed one prototype, but this one's actually supposedly coming to market this year. Robots, always at CES, they're robots. This is Samsung with the Bot Handy. This thing actually runs around and can pick things up. The little one down below is a robot that allows you to use as security. It also is a vacuum cleaner and will run around intelligently. But I thought this one over here from LG was more interesting. This is a disinfecting robot. So it runs around in ultraviolet light. So think about in your office, you let this thing loose at night, it runs around and disinfects everything. The next thing in robots, well, not really a robot. This is a drone. It's by Sony. It's called the Air Pick. But what's interesting about it is it has a professional camera on there, the Sony A7, a really high quality camera. And it's very stable, and the videos that we saw from it were very impressive. So I thought this was an interesting thing that was shown at CES. Speaking of interesting things and drones and everything else, there's also a lot of AI. And one of the more interesting ones that I noticed was what Panasonic is doing in the automotive space. Of course, we know what they're doing with Tesla, with batteries, etc. But in this particular case, they're using AI and heads-up display, so they're actually on the windshield will show you where you go. Not just a little window, but actually in the windshield you can actually see the road ahead. And of course, they'll do pedestrian detection. In this case, it happens to be a bicyclist, and of course, all the usual information you might have on it. Interesting combination of AI, sensors, and projection on a screen. Of course, I always joke that CES should really be called the Car Electronics Show, and this year is no different. A lot of different manufacturers, GM keynote. This is Mercedes, and they had an interesting concept here. This is one single dashboard, but in fact it's 3 separate screens. And so in this screen over here, you have the traditional speedometer, etc. In the middle, you have all your entertainment and heat things. But on the end, you have business type things. You could put video conferencing or watch a movie or something of that nature. Of course, it's got systems, so if you look over there, it shuts it off, etc. If the driver looks over there, it shuts it off. Whether they'll allow that in the United States, I don't know. But the concept, though, of a integrated screen with multiple things, they're not just one pane of glass, but actually it is one pane of glass, but it's actually 3 separate devices with 3 separate things. And it actually extends out to 5 devices because there are also 2 in the back seat. So interesting concept of creating an ecosystem, a network in the car where it allows you to do your business in your car as well as driving. So I thought that was an interesting concept that was being shown. Dual screen laptops, we heard about those last year. This is the Asus ZenBook. I'm fortunate that I was able to get my hands on one. This is one here. And as you can see, it has both, I'm running Zoom over here, other controls down below. I can do Hollywood Squares, content sharing, nice thin laptop, and pretty powerful. So that's something that I think we're going to see as business applications, of course. Of course, the laptop without its processor is not very much. So we had a battle between AMD and Intel as usual. This is AMD's presentation. As you can see, the higher bars are the AMD performance as compared to the core Intel things. But Intel, of course, they came out with their Alder Lake, faster, bigger, and better. But the main thing that's happening is graphics, GPUs, and that's where NVIDIA is putting a lot of power into their laptops for gaming, etc. Speaking of gaming, AMD, of course, is powering the next devices over here, which are the Sony PS5 and PlayStation 5 and Xbox. And I'm fortunate that I actually have, here's the Xbox, here's the PlayStation 5. I must say these things are extraordinarily powerful. And you can imagine going forward where not just doing games, but we can actually create virtual offices, virtual environments that will follow you, and you could use that in your home. So your home office could actually be a space station or whatever you want it to be, with actually things moving around and re-rendering, retracing in real time. Speaking of offices on the move, of course, mobile phones. Not really part of CES because it wasn't part of the normal CES thing, but it happened during CES, and it was the launch of Unpacked at Samsung, showing off their new phone. This is the Galaxy S21, sort of improves on the S20. Ultra wideband, 5G, of course. But it has smart things, Knox for security, but it also now incorporates links to Xbox, Also links to, more importantly, the Google video conferencing platform. So a lot of capabilities here on a portable device. Anyway, these are some of the things that I saw at CES that I thought might be interesting, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Thanks.
So that wraps up this CES wrap-up episode of AVNation TV's Connected. I hope you gained something from it and learned something from it. I pray and hope that before the end of this year we'll be at conferences again. I don't know when, but I know it will happen. And I hope you guys are staying safe and well. And stay tuned for the next episode of AVNation TV's Connected. It should be on in a few weeks. My name is David Danto. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.